Hi, good morning. How we doing? Good? Okay, that's that's a little... Online, how we doing? I can't hear you. Someone's listening. Someone's watching what you're saying. Okay, so glad that you all are here joining us. If you guys want to go ahead and stand with us, we're going to sing and just praise God this morning.
Praise be within the time. lost, but he brought me in. Oh, his love for me. Oh, his love for me. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. Free lass. Free lass, he has ransomed. His grace runs deep. While I was a slave to sin, Jesus died for me. Yes, he died for me. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. Sing, I'm chosen. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. Sing it out. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. Yes, I am who you say I am. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. Sing that again. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. Amen. Thanks for worshiping with us. Go ahead and take a seat.
Our relentless story began in August 2019. I was debating leaving my only professional career and taking a professional sabbatical. During that time, Chris was also on the lead team, and we knew that Discovery was working towards purchasing the Lightning Bug. And at the beginning of October, Discovery got unanimous approval for purchasing the Lightning Bug from Mars Council. And then the very next day, I was going to leave my job and make that announcement. And Chris at that time had been reading his Bible daily and going through the Bible in a year. And his reading from that day said, Abraham answered, God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son. And the two of them went on together. And he texted me that verse along with, I'm definitely committed to moving forward and seeing what God has in store for our family.
So we knew that now was not the time to take a step back. So we prayed about it, and the most sensible thing that we could come up with, that we felt like God was prompting us, was to be faithful with giving over a 2-year period the same amount that we had been giving before on the 2 incomes, even though we were only going to have 1 income.
Early in our commitment, I had just stopped working, and it was really challenging for me to step away from my professional career. There was a period where I was depressed. And one of the things that God did provide was not, a great job right away, but it was the opportunity for us to participate in a rooted group, which was something I never would have been able to do and give that level of commitment if I had still been working. So Chris and I were able to lead a group, which started before COVID and ended after COVID. And it really helped me to work through some of the identity issues that I had, where I put a lot of my identity in my career and not as much of my identity in being a child of God.
And the other thing I would add is while it's encouraging that we have finished ahead of the pace, I think it was really hard for us. We're very fortunate that we are not get behind in terms of bills. I think it was hard for us at first to make a commitment and then realize, we're going to have to faithfully trust that God is going to provide.
In terms of new things that we've learned about God, we've been Christians for quite some time. There really isn't anything new. It's really what has been affirmed through the process. And the first one is that God is always faithful. And the second is that our plans are not his plans. I had very clear-cut plans and goals for my career, and he blew them up. And you know what? I'm so grateful for that, because the time we got to spend as a family and the opportunities and the memories we made can't be replaced by titles and incomes.
While we trusted that God would do the unbelievable, I just thought he would do it in my own way, and just a reminder that God's ways are not our ways. My recommendation would be, at the end of the day, be part of something that's real, that's meaningful, that's impactful.
Hello. Welcome to Discovery. My name is Todd. I'm one of the pastors here on staff, and I just want to welcome everybody online as well, too. You guys welcome them into the room by saying hello with some applause. Yeah. You guys are awesome. Thanks for jumping on here and hanging out with us today. I'm the community pastor here. Our lead pastor is actually working back in the nursery, so if you hear a lot of crying from the lobby, that's him. That's Matt Mahaffey crying because he's holding all these babies, and it's probably getting crazy back there. So we're so glad you're here. I love Chris and Livia's story. They're some of my absolute favorite people on the planet. Very, very cool. If you don't know it, about 2 years ago, a bunch of people at Discovery came together and they prayed about it, and they decided to make some generosity commitments to give to the work that God's doing through our church, to partner with us through sacrificial generosity and to commit to something. And the Palos, as their income changed, they decided to keep their giving steady, and they leaned in faithfully, taking a risk. And they told you some of their story, but just parts of it because they're too humble to share all of it. It's been awesome to watch them be faithful and love and care and lean into the church as we try to do a whole bunch of stuff, including keep our ministry stuff going. And we never knew how relentless we'd have to be through COVID. But keep all the ministry stuff going, help out some other churches, and of course, renovate this awesome facility so that we can have parties like we did yesterday called Halloween, where we had hundreds of people in our community here hanging out and having a lot of fun. And also to have you guys here and have you guys online. And it's just been awesome as we've been relentless as a church together. If you want to jump in and give and be a part of the things going on, of course, you can give your time, your energy, and serve in places like our lead pastor is. But of course, you can also give financially. And you can do that online, you can do that through our app, or there's boxes in the back you can give there as well. And everything that's given is part of Relentless, so some of you, whether you knew it or not, we're already being relentless. Good job, well done. But of course, it's never too late to start or continue to give in some way. Again, super glad that you're here today. We have been in a series called Monsters because this is October and Halloween's next week. By the way, Halloween's on a Sunday, so we'll be here, and costumes are encouraged for sure, so make sure to wear whatever you'd like to wear. So costumes will be encouraged. It will be fun out in the lobby, but we're also doing something special that day. We're calling it Save a Seat Sunday. It's going to be a great message. It's just a good time to invite some friends, some neighbors, some family to come and hang out and see what this church thing is all about, and we promise we won't scare them away. Is that good? Okay, pun? No, it's fine. Don't worry about it. So anyway, Save a Seat Sunday is going to be great. So in this series, we've gone through vampires, those life suckers, and how we can be life-sucking to other people. We've talked about anger and werewolves, and it takes a lot of courage to confront those monsters. And so today, I want to ask a couple of you maybe to be courageous. I have a challenge for you today, especially for specific foodies. Would anybody be interested in volunteering, able to eat, whatever? If you're lactose intolerant, probably not a good idea. Anybody want to do it? Nate, come on up here. I'll take one more. Oh, Aaron's coming up, I see. Aaron's being voluntold to come up here, so come on up, Aaron. We're excited to have you guys. We have some taste testing that's going on. So, during the fall, everybody's trying to be innovative, right? They're trying to think the next big fall food. There's all kinds of apple cinnamon and spices and things like that. But of course, the most quintessential fall thing is what? PSL, pumpkin spice latte. And so we asked our resident, classically trained chef, Greg Vakiner. Raise your hand, Greg. He's our hero here. He is a fantastic chef to do his best to play God and to take PSL and infuse it in a couple different foods. And we challenged him, and he lived up to it. I'm not going to taste it because I did it the first service, and then I had like crumbs in my mouth the entire time I was talking. So we're going to have you guys do it. So first up, Are you guys ready for this? We're gonna try the pumpkin spice pizza, all right? You can see right here, it has a pumpkin pie-based sauce with Gruyere cheese, caramelized apples, and sage. So go ahead and grab your piece of pizza here. All right. Yes, you guys are brave. Well done. It's just came out of the oven. Yeah. All right, give it a try. Test it out. Did you get some good apple in there? Any thoughts, feelings? Confused? Oh, excited. Good job, Greg.
It's very good.
Oh, it's very good, Nate says. That's awesome.
Might be one bite.
Might be one bite. You can set it back down if you'd like to. You can take it back and snack on it later if you'd like to. All right, second up. Yeah, that's right. Somebody else, the person first service just ate the rest of them. They just snacked on the whole thing during the message. It's probably better than listening to the message anyway. All right, next up, pumpkin spice pickles. These pickles have been quick pickled in garlic, pumpkin pie spice, and honey, and of course vinegar. So you can go ahead and take your pickle there. Aaron, you look very excited. Like this is your jam, isn't it? You're like, oh, I want to.
I can't believe I was forced to do this.
You're forced to do this. Yeah, it was your wife.
Yeah,
I mean, you can blame her later. What do you think?
That's better.
Better. What do you think?
It's refreshing.
Refreshing. Oh, what a word. What a word. It's just like better than a pumpkin spice latte? Refreshing? Yes. I got a yes from that.
Not gonna be the rest of the day.
Yes. No, because of the garlic?
Woo.
Oh, yeah. That's right. Well, we'll get her to eat some too so you guys can kiss later. All right. The last but not least are the pumpkin pie nachos. These are white corn tortilla chips that are fried in the back, freshly made with pumpkin pie spice sugar, and then topped with a combination of Velveeta and yams. Okay? So go lean in there, make sure to get a good cheesy one.
That's a good piece.
Yeah. What about the piece you're going to get, Aaron?
I literally could not stop snacking.
Oh, yeah. Greg loves these. These are his favorite one. You guys ready? You go for it. Yeah. Oh, my hero. How was it? Maybe I should wait. This is why I'm not eating it right now, because I was trying to talk and I was like shooting crumbs out the whole time. The front row, we gave them ponchos just to make sure. What do you think? Oh, okay, mediocre, fine.
I was going to say I could eat a whole tray.
You can eat, okay, well, congratulations for you, Nate. We're going to give you this tray. Please take it with you, and you can snack on it the rest of the message. Yes, thank you, guys. Give these guys a round of applause. Oh, wow. The courage. I had these waters for them, but I forgot to give them, so now I'm just going to drink them all while we're hanging out here. Hey, that is what we call, like I said, playing God, messing with technology, doing our best to kind of see what's out there. Doing this whole project with Greg reminded me of that classic line from Jurassic Park from Jeff Goldblum's character. Your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should. And while that meme has mostly been applied to food things like that, like a KFC Double Down or Flamin' Hot Mountain Dew, which just came out, that movie was just a semi-recent example of an age-old concern about whether or not our technological capacity was going to outpace our moral conscience in the years to come. But long before that movie and some of the more recent things that ask that question, there was a novel that was published in 1818 by a young woman named Mary Shelley. It was a book called Frankenstein, or the modern Prometheus. The Frankenstein monster has become its own evolving cultural meme. You've doubtless seen many different adaptations and attempts, and I tried over this past week to watch as many of them as I could, and honestly, they are all very, very bad. So I tried really, really hard. So I went to a deep dive in the book because I found that to be way more interesting, and I was shocked to find what I found. It's a much different story than I expected and way more interesting than I ever expected. First of all, one of the things that mostly shocked me is that the whole book actually takes place at the North Pole. I'm surprised there's not a run-in with Santa. And in fact, the action starts with Victor Frankenstein on a dog sled chasing the creation, the monster, also on a dog sled. There's a dog sled chase scene, which makes me think the best adaptation to date so far might just be Snow Dogs. I mean, this is Frankenstein at its best, I think. As you probably know, though it's easy to forget, Frankenstein is actually the name of the doctor, not his creation. When the creature wakes up, its eyes meet Victor Frankenstein, who is horrified and immediately darts out of the room and runs as far as he can into town. Then the creation, he's like this innocent infant born with a gigantic body. He waddles out into the world, stumbling through it, disoriented, confused, and alone. And in that kind of cliche scene, he goes into a town and he's met with torches and pitchforks and run off. So he goes off in hiding and he learns what it's like to be a human from a family from a distance. Eventually, he tries to become friends with the family. He goes to the old blind patriarch and begins to talk with him. But then when the other relatives show up and see who their father is talking to, they chase him away with violence. Then he runs out. He finds a woman who's drowning. He pulls her out. And as he's trying to save her, he gets shot by another man, assuming the worst. And so eventually, he runs back to his creator, begging him to create for him a companion. And Dr. Frankenstein agrees at first, but then he inevitably changes his mind. So scene after scene, the creature is misunderstood, which fosters fear, which leads to all kinds of violence committed against the creature. So he sets off to take revenge on his creator, to make Victor as lonely as he is. He wasn't born a monster, but through the way he was treated, through rejection and fear and false accusations, he eventually becomes one. Have you seen this before? Maybe in your own life, maybe in somebody else's life, somebody that's constantly told that there's something that they don't want to be until they eventually become what everyone expects them to be. We oftentimes call that self-fulfilling prophecy. We lay our expectations on others, or others' expectations get laid on us until the external input breeds an internal reality and we slowly transform into something else, maybe even a monster. This story reminds me of one of the quintessential stories of Jesus, who encounters a man in a similar situation, someone that was told he was kind of a monster, who was probably innocently accused of all kinds of evil as well. He was plagued with misunderstandings surrounding his identity. This story is actually so important to the character and nature of who Jesus is that it's found in 3 of the 4 biographers' accounts to describe him, especially at the very beginning. This is the way that one of my favorite biographers, Luke, tells it. He says this: in one of the villages, Jesus met a man with an advanced case of leprosy. Before the Christian movement began to develop medicine and hospitals to the prominent place they are now, God still guided his people with some very rudimentary health and safety measures. Most of them have to do with really simple, basic things like washing your hands, waiting for some time, quarantining for 7 days, and then instructions about how to re-enter society. You can actually read all of this, especially about skin conditions and the various kinds that are out there, in chapter 13 of the book of Leviticus. I did it this week, and I highly don't recommend it. Don't read it. It honestly reads a lot more like the CDC's website than you would think. The author, Luke, was himself an ancient doctor, and so he knew better than most about what these skin conditions could look like, and so he actually adds a word that the other biographers don't use. He puts the word in there, advanced, to let us know that this was the worst of the worst kind of skin condition, the scary kind, the kind where someone's skin is so mutilated and excessively scarred that they're beyond recognition. Just the worst case scenario you could possibly imagine. Today, the medical name for that is Hanson's disease, and it's just as contagious as the song MMMBop. So, that one worked that time. Good. All right. Yeah? Okay. All right. All right, well, so it really is called Hanson's disease. While it does damage the skin, the really insidious problem is that it damages the nerve endings within the skin. It prevents someone from feeling pain, and when your skin is numb and you become susceptible to all kinds of other damage that's inflicted on you that you otherwise could have avoided if you could only feel pain. So, for the most part, the disfiguration of lepers, the skin damage, maybe the lost limbs, all the scars are not the result of the disease, but what has happened to the person. That is, what makes a leper look monstrous isn't just the damage from the inside out, but the damage from the outside in. These days, we know it's caused by a bacterial infection, which is spread through, wait for it, get this, respiratory droplets. No joke, it really is. So check out the instructions that were written thousands of years ago to those who have the worst of the worst kind of skin condition. This is what they're supposed to do in Leviticus 13. Those who suffer from a serious skin disease must tear their clothes and leave their hair uncombed. They must cover their mouth and call out, "Unclean, unclean," as they walk through any village or town or anywhere they're at. As long as the serious disease lasts, they will be ceremonially unclean. They must live in isolation in a place outside of society, outside of their camp. See, it's just like the CDC. Cover your mouth, let everyone know you're infected, isolate, quarantine. Can you imagine what it would be like to be in a leper's skin? Maybe now you can more than ever. Can you imagine the stares as you walk through town, you encounter other people, like coughing in the grocery store these days, what people might say or think or how they might respond to your warnings? Hey, I'm unclean, I'm unclean. To make matters worse, over the years, some of the people in their culture began to wrongly assume that they had this horrific condition because they deserved it. They thought that their suffering was a result of God's judgment. Tragically, their society's empathy oftentimes evaporated for those that were suffering the most. So there may have been added cursing, added pointing, added accusations as they walked through town, just trying to warn everybody that they could infect them. Like Frankenstein's creation, lepers looked like monsters, so they began to be treated like they really were. So you can see the same problem between these two, this unnamed leper and Frankenstein's unnamed creation. Bad information and misunderstanding leads to fear, which leads to rejection, and hatred, which leads to utter isolation. Have you felt that way recently? Lonely, rejected, isolated in some way? You've heard fairy tale stories of mentors or partners or friends that catalyze each other into great success. We watch them on TV, some of our favorite people, Sean and Gus, Troy and Abed, Leslie and Ann. You go on, George and Jerry, friendships that catalyze each other to big dreams, learning secret insights from each other, big breaks, being discovered, going on adventures. But now it seems like those days will never come for you. Those people don't exist. You're just going to have to make it in your career or in life on your own. Or you're starting to feel it in your new work from home lifestyle, or even your church from home lifestyle, or your newly experienced homeschool lifestyle. It frees up some time. It makes the world feel really accessible, but sometimes it just feels like something's missing too. We've talked a lot about neighborhoods and loving our neighbors. Maybe your home feels like an island. Even though you're surrounded by people, it just never really feels like you fit in with the people that live near you. Or maybe it's your kids' schedules that take up all of your time, your attention, your energy. You don't remember the last time you had an adult conversation. It feels like you're just giving and pouring yourself out to them all the time and getting very little back in return. Or maybe it's even in your marriage. You feel misunderstood. You're trying to keep up with all the demands of work and all the other things that are going on in your life, and it's left little time for your spouse. Sometimes my wife, Sam, she'll come to me and she's just frustrated, be like, I just want to feel connected to you. And so I'll look at, when I'm being a jerk, I'll look at her, stare her in the eyes and be like, oh, connect, are we connecting yet? Because it's like this intangible sense of relationship that you just can't figure out how to make happen, right? Sometimes home can feel like the loneliest place. I remember during a particularly lonely time, I read this line about Jesus in John 1. It says this: he came into the world that he created, like he came home, but the world didn't recognize him. They didn't know who he was. That sums up his life. He came home, and the people there didn't welcome him in with a big banner or with balloons or embrace him like a child would to a mother after a long, hard work trip. So instead, the human race said, new number, who dis? Right? If you feel alone, a lot of cheesy jokes here, guys, just like those nachos. If you feel alone, you're not alone. You're not only like Jesus, you're actually like most people. Today, leprosy isn't gone, but it is cured. Between the ancient practices of quarantining, the revolutionary treatments that came about in the 1940s, and a new vaccine in 2016, they've slowly been able to work towards the eradication of Hanson's disease. But there's still one leper colony in America. It's in Hawaii, actually. Not a bad place to live isolated for the rest of your days, right? But in India, there's still several of them, tens, almost hundreds of them, almost only because of discrimination. Once you have leprosy there, you'll always be labeled a leper, whether you're cured or not, both socially and legally. The famous saintly missionary Mother Teresa, her life's work was among those dying of HIV/AIDS, tuberculosis, and yes, leprosy in India. But she once famously observed this: loneliness is the leprosy of the modern world. As dangerous as leprosy can be, loneliness might just be even more dangerous for more people. She goes on to say, the greatest disease in the West today is not TB or leprosy. It is being unwanted, unloved, and uncared for. There are many in this world who are dying for a piece of bread, but there are many more dying just for a little love. In 2018, before the pandemic, one study found that 1 in 5 adults reported feeling lonely. More recently, after the pandemic, other studies have found maybe 1 in 3. That means about 100 people that have been sitting in these seats today or out in our lobby or tuning in online feel isolated and lonely and deeply rejected, maybe wondering if they're more of a monster than they ever realized. 100 people. It's no real surprise, is it? We're just kind of giving numbers to something we already feel, we already know. But the worst of it is found among young adults, people that are my age. According to another study of thousands of young people in 25 countries, most of them feel connected to people all over the planet, but just 1 in 3 of 18 to 35-year-olds say they feel deeply cared for by those around them and that someone believes in them. 1 in 3 think they feel loved. 2/3 don't. Isn't that heartbreaking? And yet you're probably already thinking, but don't we live in the most interconnected, globalized society ever? Like, especially the young people. They know how the Tic Tacs work and the chat snaps and the goggle hangouts. They know these things. Why can't they connect with people and be friends? The Frankenstein story is on the one hand about the creature becoming a monster through rejection, but on the other, it's about Dr. Victor Frankenstein's failure to think through the consequences of his technological innovation and take responsibility. His obsession with what he could do, not what he should do. We've begun to see that's the case with our technology too, haven't we? We've seen in the news some whistleblowers from Facebook and Instagram, right? And what are they saying? All kinds of different things about how much Facebook knew what they were doing and yet they didn't change. They consistently chose profits over integrity. One of them claimed our algorithm exploits the human brain's attraction to divisiveness. They knew this. They're in the business of grabbing and keeping your attention, and they do that by promoting controversy, which is fueled at best by misinformation, half-truths, and extremely polarizing content. And then it trains us as viewers to act the same way towards people. We mimic what we see. They've known about this forever, and they refuse to do anything about it until now their hand is finally being forced. According to their own internal data, 1 in 3 teenage girls admit that Instagram was a key component to their body image issues. Another report leaked from MIT recently found that the many popular Facebook groups are actually run by Eastern European companies that are engineering polarizing extremist content. They have coordinated efforts to make people angry with misinformation. And the algorithm puts it on yours and your kids and your dad's newsfeed. In fact, in 2019, 19 of Facebook's 20 groups aimed at American Christians were located outside of America for the intentional purpose of trying to grab people's attention, especially people like us, and distract us from what's really going on. See, it's more than just social media, though. There's a phenomenal research agency that works specifically to understand Christian perspectives called Barna. And in their words, we live in a screen-led culture, and this is what it's led to: the tyranny of now, overloading our choices, weaponizing humor, making snarky cool and cynical smart. And in the data they found, our obsession with screens in all its forms has led, in their words, to profound alienation. But the problem isn't just with content, it's actually with our biochemistry. 2 months ago, the Wall Street Journal, they published a story from a psychiatrist and Stanford professor titled "Digital Addictions Are Drowning Us in Dopamine." She tells a story about a patient in his 20s who came to her with debilitating anxiety and depression. He dropped out of college, he was living with his parents, and he was considering suicide. Most of his life was dominated by video games and screens. Instead of prescribing medicine, like she would have in the past, she actually just challenged him to give up screens for a month. She explained that our brains are finely tuned to find balance. And so when we overuse technology, especially those platforms that are designed to be addictive, we overproduce not only the pleasureful dopamine, but also the chemicals that offset it. She notes that one study found that the number of new cases of depression worldwide increased 50% between 1990 and 2017 with the highest increase in regions with the highest income, especially North America. What happened during those years? The month away was hard for our young video gamer, but it gave his brain the opportunity to regulate again. She writes, reducing phone use is notoriously difficult because at first it causes the brain's pleasure-pain balance to tilt to the side of pain, making us feel restless and cranky. But if we can keep it up long enough, the benefits of a healthier dopamine balance are worth it. Our minds are less preoccupied with craving. We are more capable to be present in the moment, and life's little unexpected joys become rewarding again. Now listen, if you know me, you know I love technology. I love video games. I love watching and so many incredible, creative, hilarious, innovative TV shows. I feel incredibly blessed to live at this magical time in history where we can be so connected to people and information and to so many creative endeavors that people are about. But the problem is many of our screen interactions, from Facebook to cable news to Netflix, they're just not curated very well. We use it too much, myself included, and a large majority of it has become cynical and negative. It's almost all haters with hot takes, right? In this book, there is no assistant. There is no Igor to help Dr. Frankenstein. Instead, he alienates himself from his friends and his family to pursue his innovation in isolation. And when he finally gave life to the creature, what did he do? He rejects it. He runs away from his responsibility. And when the creature returned to him, asking for help, he adamantly refused. This whole story is told from the perspective of Victor Frankenstein, who never gives his creation a name. Instead, look at the names he gives it. He calls it a wretch, a creature, a demon, a devil, a fiend, it, vile insect, an abhorrent monster. No wonder he becomes what he becomes. When you're filling your ears with a lot of negative content like that, it begins to fill your mind and eventually your heart. That's not too different from our conflict-obsessed social media. We go to Twitter and Facebook and Instagram for acceptance, and inevitably, what do we find? Rejection, just like the monster. So to summarize all this quickly, screens have unfortunately made us lonely because sometimes they are intentionally divisive, and it teaches us to do the same. They're designed for shallow interaction, if any at all. And thirdly, they literally break our brains. Our technology obsession has overloaded our brains and polarized us to the point of isolation. In all of these debates between Republicans and Democrats, from maskers and anti-maskers, from vaxxers and anti-vaxxers, from Black Lives Matter protesters to support the police people, we're alienating each other. Both aren't right in these debates. Someone is definitely right and someone is definitely wrong. If you want to talk about who's right or wrong, I'd love to do that. There's definitely things to be talked about within those. But the problem is not that there's two different issues or two different sides to any story. The problem is how we're treating each other as we talk about them. As much as we're told to think they are not monsters on the other side. But we keep acting like they are. Because especially, because we especially do that in our online engagement and impersonal connections. And the more we treat them like monsters, the more they're going to live up to that. Just like Frankenstein's creature, the leper in Luke 5 comes to his creator asking for help, and this is how it goes. When the man saw Jesus, he bowed with his face to the ground, begging to be healed. Lord, he said, if you are willing, you can heal me and you can make me clean. You notice the qualifier he has, if you are willing. Now, some of us might read that and think, well, what he's saying is, sometimes God says no to good things for something better, and so maybe he won't heal him because he has other purposes or whatever. I don't think the leper is thinking so philosophically here. I mean, for one, he has been treated like a monster his entire life. He's been told by his society he deserves his condition. And then secondly, this is at the beginning of all of the biographers explaining who Jesus is. So maybe this is all of them trying to establish something right off the bat for their readers. Implicit in this qualifier maybe is this question about the character of the creator that he's approaching. Whether he's a monster like Frankenstein. He says, if you are willing, is also the question, are you the kind of person that wants to help me? Or in other words, could someone like you ever care about someone like me? Maybe his question is a really good prayer for us to adopt, asking not just for help, but also asking for God to show us what he's really like, asking God if he accepts us or rejects us. So many of us have grown up being told, not only online, but in real life too, that we deserve our suffering or our pain, that we're a waste of space because of what we think or what we did, that we don't have enough faith and that's why we're not better, that we have an unrepentant sin. If we could just figure out what that is and get that out of our lives, things would get better, that God is more like a bad cop than a loving parent. Maybe technology or something else has led you into those dark places, and maybe you do and think monstrous things because you find yourself there. Maybe it's reveling and the tragedies of the other side in the debates. Or it's piling on in the debate, jumping in and attacking, or weaponizing humor to make your point and put somebody down, or sending that email that you know will elevate you and discredit someone else, or to dehumanize and objectify women or men by scrolling through nude photos. And in your guilt, you feel shame, wondering if anybody really knew what you thought or what you really did. Could you ever really be accepted? You think Jesus, if you could actually see his face, would be disgusted with the monster that you've become. You're unlovable, so you're doomed to be alone. But how does Jesus not only address the leper's physical condition, but also his lonely, emotional, spiritual condition too? This is what happens. Jesus reached out and touched him. I am willing, he said. Be healed, and instantly the leprosy disappeared. So this monster gets the opposite response from Victor Frankenstein. Not rejection, not disgust, not refusing to help. He touches his scarred, tattered, disease-ridden skin, places his hand on his shoulder or what was left of it, and he says, I am that kind of guy. You are accepted. You are loved. I'm here with you. I am willing. You're not alone anymore. Then he gives him instructions to go back into his community, no longer rejected and isolated. And in our own exaggerated isolation, loneliness, and dysfunctional connection in the modern world, maybe that's all we really need too, a simple touch. Barna, the Christian research group I mentioned before, they've done a lot of work to understand what makes someone who follows Jesus resilient, what makes them fully committed to following Jesus no matter how chaotic the culture might be around them. People with a strong sense of self-worth and purpose and character, no matter what the world throws at them. What makes them tick? And this is what they write. One answer that emerges from the data is the importance of a personal encounter with and experience of Jesus. Prayer is a vibrant part of resilient disciples' lives. It includes listening to God. Those with the resiliency to responsibly and healthily navigate the unique challenges of our innovating, changing digital culture are those who find their acceptance primarily in a kind of consistent touch from Jesus, who bow down and look to him on a regular basis, day after day, and ask, if you are willing, if you're that kind of person, will you heal me and make me clean and make me feel accepted? Mother Teresa further noticed this about the lonely world. This is completing the quote from before, actually. She says, the poverty in the West is a different kind of poverty. It's not only a poverty of loneliness, but also of spirituality. There's a hunger for love as there is a hunger for God. In our alienation, do we really believe that if we turn to him, he'll answer us maybe the same way he answered the leper? Do we really believe in the power of touch, the power of his acceptance? See, relational resilience and the end of our own lonely isolation starts when we turn towards God, asking him if he'll help, and we find on the other side that he actually is willing. This is not just some nice sentiment. This is a researched, observable, sociological reality that's only unfortunately being experienced by a small number of hardy Christians. Jesus stops the cycle of lonely Frankenstein monsters. He reaches out and sticks his hand into the machine and into the cycle at the cost of himself. He touches the untouchables. So how should we let him do that in our lives? I have two suggestions. One, curate the quality of your tech. If you have an iPhone, I don't know what you Android people do, but if you have an iPhone, you may have gotten this morning, maybe you've turned it off already, your screen time report. It'll say something like 30% up for 9 hours this week, and you're like, shut up, I don't want to hear from you. Many of us probably ignored it or have turned it off. It's almost poetic that it was scheduled for Sunday mornings sometime, right? On average, 8 to 12-year-olds spend about 5 hours on screens every day. Teenagers, 9 hours, 7 hours for the average adult. That's a lot of time. And the question, of course, is how the content we're consuming and indulging in is shaping us both consciously and subconsciously. Is it making us more the person God dreamed we could become, or the person that we've hoped we've always wanted to become, or more like the Frankenstein monster became? More Barna research, this is a chart. They said even using conservative estimates, the typical young person spends nearly 20 times more hours per year using screen-driven media than taking in any sort of spiritual content. For the typical young churchgoer, the ratio is still more than 10 times as much cultural content as spiritual intake. The little black part is the spiritual content. The big green monstrous part is the other kind of content. Everything else, it actually even kind of looks like the Frankenstein monster, so there you go. Are we using these tools we've been given well, or are we failing to recognize the responsibility we have, like Victor Frankenstein? I love asking parents about their rules for kids of all ages and screen time. You guys have thought a ton about it, and I'm always fascinated by how it works within your household. You guys are doing a fantastic job. But as much as we think about how we're parenting our kids with screen time, I wonder how much we think about it for ourselves, for adults. See, the tech ecosystem, they're continuing to evolve to give us more and more tools to limit the quantity of our digital intake. You can put screen time on your own phone too. I do, and yes, I can get through the firewall. It's not that hard, but it at least gives me like a check to say, all right, maybe I shouldn't do this now. And now, again, with the new iOS update, again, Android people, you're gonna have to figure it out. I don't know if you're God's people or not, but with the new iOS update, there's all kinds of profiles and bedtimes you can set to focus when you're in specific times and places. It's an incredible tool, and we just need to use it. What if you didn't just parent your kids, but you also parented your own phones? You took responsibility for your technology. What if you put your phones to bed before you put your kids to bed? What if you picked one day a week to completely detox from screens? Or if that's too much, maybe just one day a month. Silicon Valley knows better than us. In a few years, we're going to start looking at platforms like social media the way we do cigarettes today. Horrible for you and addicting. But the problem keeps getting covered up for now. Unless they change something, we're going to reject them. So they keep giving us these awesome tools that we're not taking advantage of. These kind of nicotine patches for screens to help us regulate our intake. So I would challenge you today to look into those options for limiting your own exposure. There are plenty of options out there. Use them, but for some of us, it's not about phones, it's the other screens we need to think about. In-person events are struggling right now, but Netflix isn't, Fox News isn't, CNN isn't, Disney Plus isn't. Treat your attention the way that advertisers and all these tech companies do, like it's the most valuable thing in the world, and give it the diet it deserves. We don't need to reject screens. We need to learn to curate them like a nice collection of wine or gallery of art, finding the right place, the right time to interact with them so they enhance our world and relationships, not destroy them. Remember that counselor dealing with video game addicts? Once he detoxed from dopamine overload, he actually went back to video games. But he gave himself a strict 2 days a week for 2 hours a day limit, and now he only plays with friends so that the digital connection supplements his in-person relationships. Responsibly, he started using games instead of letting games use him. I mean, here at Discovery, we love technology. I mean, we do this, we stream online, we try to stay connected to our people there. We think it's a fantastic way to curate technology to use this streaming option. We provide all kinds, we have an app, we encourage people to use the Bible app all the time. We want to utilize technology for the benefit and the growth of us as people who are trying to follow Jesus. And so we encourage that like crazy, don't get me wrong. We just have to understand, how do we take our technology and use it to become the kinds of people God dreams for us to be, not the kind of people the world wants us to be. You know, we're going to do something, and I want to challenge you guys to do this today. We're going to use technology next month, specifically on November 7th. We're going to kick off a journey of challenges using your phone, using text messages. And we would love for you to jump in and join us. It is going to be an immersive experience that I promise can transform the way you think about the world and Jesus. And if you want to do that, you just text PGH M25 to 56170. You can do that right now. We'll give you more options to do it in the next couple weeks. But it's going to be an immersive challenge assisted by technology, curating it well to help shape us into the people that God's called us to be. The power of technology can be leveraged for incredibly good things too, when it's handled responsibly. It's here to stay with us. We just have to think about how it's going to shape us. So we better start finding better ways to make it work for you. This challenge is one of them. So curate the quality of your tech, and secondly, create more quantity of your touch. There are a lot of good reasons people have been staying at home and avoiding in-person interaction, avoiding exposing others. I've been so proud of the way our church has responded to the pandemic. You guys are so awesome. I'm so proud to be a part of this community. But while there is a time to stay away, there's also a time to engage. We are physical creatures that need physical interaction. Just as the digital world can manipulate our biochemistry, so can touch. They're like special nerve endings in our skin that are like buttons that send off a chain of reaction that release a chemical called oxytocin. Oxytocin is at the core of our feelings of positivity and bonding and trust with other people. It helps reduce stress and anxiety. And it also, counterintuitively, when you get touched by somebody else, it actually increases your immune system, strangely enough. Maybe this is why Jesus touching that leper was so powerful. After years of never being touched by another human being, he finally feels oxytocin transform his biochemistry. And on a miraculous level, it fuels his immune system. We should be careful to wash our hands and sanitize so we can responsibly shake hands, pat backs, high five, and give hugs. This week, as you curate your tech, I'd also beg you to create more quantity of your touch. And married men, I don't mean what you think I mean by that, but I don't not mean what you think I mean by that. I dare you to schedule something. Plan a dinner or coffee with somebody who's good for your psyche. An interaction that you know will be like that between Jesus and the leper, that treats you like the person you are, not a monster. If you're in a neighborhood group, but you haven't been responding to your leader, you haven't shown up very much, this is the week to go. If you got a text invite from somebody to go on a dinner date, I know I have a couple of them out there. This is the day to kind of try to get stuff scheduled on your calendar. If you have a good friend that maybe doesn't live that far or live too close to here that you need to connect with, that you know makes you want to be a better person, more like Jesus is calling you to be, give them a call. Use technology to create that personal touch, even if it's not physical. Put something on the calendar today for this week. Consider making this kind of interaction a consistent practice in your life. That every week you need one meaningful interaction at least, one life-giving phone call, one powerful touch. I've become more and more convinced over the last few years that while we can definitely control the quality of the media we engage, we cannot manufacture quality time. You will remember certain moments more than others, but the only way to get quality time is to give quantity of time. To spend a lot of time with someone and let quality time arise out of it. That goes for your connection with Jesus too. We can't physically interact with Jesus right now, but he's promised something better. And so every week we like to take a moment to remind us that Jesus is closer to us than he ever was to that leper. That he's closer than touch, and when he reaches out, we can feel all of the benefits and more of his presence into our lives. He's moved into our skin and bones when we seek to follow him. So as we continue to worship, I just want to encourage you to spend these next few minutes imagining you're in a place that the leper was in. When he saw Jesus, what did he do? He bowed with his face to the ground, begging to be healed. So take all of your loneliness, your alienation, your rejection, all those things that make you feel monstrous, and bring them to Jesus and ask the same thing. Lord, if you are willing, you can heal me and make me clean. And so if you came in, you probably grabbed a little packet. If you didn't, you can grab it while we're worshiping. They're back in the back. They have a little bit of bread and a little bit of juice that remind us of Jesus' body that was broken for you and for me, and his blood that was poured out for you and for me. But more than that, a body and blood that came back to life for you and me to live closer to us than he ever could have to that leper or anyone else that we read about in the biblical story. The same thing he wants to speak into your heart that he spoke to him, to that leper. He said this, he said, I am willing, I am that kind of guy, so be healed. Let's pray. God, we are so grateful for this story that establishes your character so clearly. We're so grateful the tools that we get to have and to use to get to know other people, to stay connected throughout the world. We're so grateful for the technology and the innovation that you've brought into this world. We're so thankful for science and medicine and all of the ways that we can stay interconnected and learn new information. God, those things are great, but help us to know how to wisely curate those experiences so that we become more like the people you have imagined and dreamed and been excited about us becoming. And through those things and more, and through our prayers, especially our worship time right now, may we have an encounter with you that builds a hearty connection, a sense of acceptance, and a sense of love, and sense of identity and purpose to become the resilient followers that you're calling us to become. Give us the wisdom to curate the quality of our tech, and give us the opportunity to create more quantity of our touch. We love you, God. We give you these moments as we try to come seek you, and we pray that you will show up and we can hear in our hearts what you said to that man, that you are willing. Be healed. Amen.
When you invite you to stand with us as we close out in a new song that sings about the restoration that we find in the presence of our Father. As Todd was talking about those things, I just couldn't help but think about all the identities, all the things that we can take on in this life that God never intended for us. So we invite you to sing along with us as we praise God for that victory, that freedom that we find in Him. Sometimes on this journey, we're lost in our mistakes. Looks to me like weakness is a canvas for your truth. My story isn't over, my story's just begun. Feel you want to find me, 'cause that's what my Father does. Feel you want to find me, 'cause that's what my Father does. Lay your burden
All right, thanks so much for coming out to Discovery today. We're really glad that you chose to spend some time with us. Just two quick things before you guys head out the door. You can go ahead and have a quick seat. Two quick things before you head out the door. One, base camp is immediately following this service. Out in the public room, there'll be pizza and there'll be childcare if you have kids. Make sure you check that out. It's a great way to learn about who we are as a church, what the vision is, what the values are of this place. So make sure you check that out if you want to learn more about what Discovery is all about. Second thing is tonight, right here from 6:30 to 8 is the Lumberjack Games. If you are in 6th through 12th grade, you want to check that out. I hear there will be you'll be allowed to throw axes at Alex or I don't know, something like that. I'm not sure what happens at the Lumberjack Games, but it'll be fun and there'll be great stuff to do. And you can dress in your favorite lumberjack gear, which I guess means flannels. Whatever your lumberjack gear is, make sure you wear that and have fun tonight. And then finally, check out this video from Tanisha about the Women's Summit coming up here in a couple of weeks.
So after service last week, I had some trouble giving up the microphone. It was surprisingly fun to walk around the lobby awkwardly interviewing people. But one of the more helpful conversations I had was with one of the gals who had yet to sign up for the Women's Summit. So I asked her if there was anything she wished we had communicated better or what it was that was keeping her from taking the plunge. And I can completely empathize with her response. She said, honestly, it's kind of a hassle getting childcare worked out for a whole day. It's doable, but I'm kind of a person who would rather be productive if I'm going to take that much time away from the normal schedule. And being around people I don't know is draining. I realize that we can't overcome every objection, and sometimes the timing just isn't right to make ourselves a priority. But I know that at some point y'all have had that experience where you had made a commitment and then the day of you were like, I just don't wanna. But then for whatever reason you went anyway and you had that chat with that girl in the group that you had never met before and you learned that you both didn't wanna go that night. And then you bonded over your, at times, tedious jobs, or that you both have kids that act like jerks and you feel guilty about how much space away from them you daydream about. Or even that you both are single and rocking the dating world, but all of your closest friends are in different stages of life. Maybe you made a best friend that night. Or maybe you just shared an evening with someone that was totally speaking your language. Ladies, this time together that we have planned for you isn't gonna be a one-size-fits-all party. But there is a possibility that you will walk away understanding way more about who you are and who God designed you to be than if you didn't come. We have 2 guest speakers coming from 2 different parts of the country, bringing with them 2 different life journeys. And yet God has planted them both in our paths for 2 days so we can be empowered and inspired by what He wants us to hear. I've been fortunate enough to hear both of these women speak, as will you, since they'll be alternating speaking during our main sessions together. Demetra is the lead pastor of Legacy Brooklyn Church in New York, and every message that she teaches is taught from a place of passion and deep love for Jesus. Suzanne is a leading woman in the news world as the director of WSB TV Atlanta, and she speaks from a great sense of knowledge and heart for people to know Jesus in a very real and tangible way. Choosing Jesus means you don't have to go at it alone. He has the power to tear down the lies, shame, guilt, false identity, and weight that so easily trips us up in this life. Our planning team of gals have worked diligently to plan an event where, in addition to learning about your identity in Christ, you can also have a little fun, whether you are an introvert or an extrovert. Personally, I'm an introvert, so I get you. Just kidding, I'm not an introvert, but most of my closest friends are. And since Brittany has already called dibs on being your girlfriend, I can be your hype girl. And as the hype girl, it is my job to tell you to come spend November 5th and 6th with us. And if it's a financial strain that is keeping you from coming, then please know we got you. There are partial or full scholarships available. We don't want anyone who is ready and willing to make this time together a priority and have that to be the thing that keeps them away. So sign up. You have less than a week to dilly-dally. Thank you all for joining us today. Enjoy the rest of your day.